First of all, Russia provides nearly 25% of oil and 40% of natural gas to Europe. Sanctions or damage to the pipelines would reduce supply, as 3 pipelines run through Ukraine. Not only that, but Ukraine produces 14% of the global wheat supply, and a large portion of that gets exported to Europe. Thus, the invasion will have a significant impact to the volatile food and energy prices in Europe. If the oil and wheat supply decreases in Europe, this would push prices higher.
Hello, folks. I'm a carbon atom, and since I'm an essential part of each of the hydrocarbons in crude oil, I'm here to give you the inside dope on gasoline.
Many millions of years of geological history.
The great bulk of the world's oil was formed at just 2 very brief moments of extreme global warming 90 and 150 million years ago.
1 barrel of oil, the refined product of which 42 gallons of gasoline you can buy for a little over $100, will produce as much energy, as much work as you will get from 12 people working all year for you.
Take an average man performing physical labor for 25,000 hours to produce the amount of energy that's contained in that 1 barrel of oil. That barrel of oil, if it's pulled out of the ground in Iraq, can be pulled out of the ground for $1. You invest $1 and you get back 25,000 hours of human labor. That's an energy source that is so dense, it's essentially free energy.
%70 of the barrel of oil is refined into transportation fuels, which include motor gasoline, diesel fuel, jet fuel, railroad fuel, and maritime fuel. 98% of all transportation energy comes from oil.
Construction of an average car consumes somewhere between the energy equivalent of 27 and 54 barrels of oil, depending on whose statistics you use. A computer, the construction of the average desktop computer, consumes 10 times this weight in fossil fuels. A microchip consumes 630 times this weight in fossil fuels during its construction. For every calorie that you eat in the United States, and probably a similar number in other industrialized nations, requires 10 calories of hydrocarbon energy.
There are 6.4 billion people, I think, living on the planet now. Most of them are reasonably well fed, and that's a consequence of what was called the Green Revolution in the second half of the 20th century. The Green Revolution consists in very large measure of fertilizing land with petrochemicals, fertilizers that are derived from petroleum.
Farming has changed more in the last 50 years than it did in the previous 1,000. A farmer today can work 5 times the land his father worked and still have time for leisure that his father never knew. The petroleum that runs these modern hired hands has not confined progress in farming to the fields. Life is easier for the farm wife, too. What it comes down to is that the oil industry has to please Mrs. Martin and millions just like her. Already today, she's used some 87 petroleum products, including the plastic bacon wrapper and the wax of the milk carton. She'll top 100 before the day is over.
The liquids that come out of oil as it's processed and refined create the building block for all of our petrochemical, chemical, plastics, pharmaceutical, these, zillions of things.
Fires, insecticides, cosmetics, weed killers, a whole galaxy of things to make a better life on Earth. And it isn't just oil companies that try to outdo each other, competing for the customer's dollar. The same story is true of almost every successful business enterprise on the whole planet.
Well, whether you know it or not, every single preparation on this beautiful lady's dressing table, every single thing she is wearing is influenced by oil. Just for fun, let's take away all these articles dependent upon petroleum. Her hand mirror, cosmetics, perfume, and manicure set made of plastics. Her synthetic silk negligee, her silk under... Oh, science can go no further.
It's not just that the country is spread out. We've evolved our cities for the use of cars. The cities would have to be rebuilt from scratch practically to have more efficient, usable public transportation. This is quite different from the cities in Europe, which were already basically in place before the car was invented. So yes, it's going to be a terrible blow to the United States when we no longer have the oil that we love so much.
But we have waited so long, and the three things that we need are now in very short supply. One of them is money, and in our country we don't worry about money. We just borrow it from our kids and our grandkids in accumulating a debt. But the other two things we can't borrow from our kids and our grandkids, and that's time and energy. We've got to look at all of these sources of energy, and if you add them all together, you must be very optimistic about each of these sources to believe that we can produce anything like the quantity and quality of energy that we're getting from fossil fuels.
Worldwide demand now is somewhere between 25 and 30 billion barrels a year, and it's increasing at an alarming rate. And that's really where the problem is. The demand is so huge, there is nothing that we can imagine to replace oil in those quantities. There are lots of ideas around, and the ideas are just vapor until somebody actually tries them and shows that they either work or and have side effects or don't have side effects or don't work or whatever. That's called research.
It's very unlikely that we're going to be able to maintain the kind of lifestyles that we're now maintaining. This oil is so cheap. It's so readily available. There was just such an enormous temptation to exploit this and to set up a quality of lifestyle that it will be impossible to maintain.
In the future, things like driving cars and air travel, period, will be not something that the average person can afford, but something that's only available to the super, super elite, the 1/10 of 1%.
A graduate student came to see me and he said, "Tell me, will my grandchildren ever ride in an airplane?" It was a gripping question because the answer might very well be no.
I would say air travel will substantially stop.
Many people came to think that it was money that made the world go round, when in reality it was the underlying supply of cheap energy, much of it coming from oil.
You end up with asking, what is more real? Is it the financial market or is it the oil supply in the ground? And everybody will come to the conclusion what is more real is the oil supply in the ground. The financial system is a system full of petrodollars, and if you take them out, it's bound to shrink.
There isn't a company quoted on the stock exchange that doesn't tacitly assume a business-as-usual supply of cheap oil. Well, that isn't there anymore. That means that virtually every company is overvalued on the stock exchange. And as the financial community recognizes this, well, that might trigger some kind of overreaction and stock market collapse. I think it's very likely.
Oil is our God. I don't care if somebody says they worship Jesus, Buddha, Allah, whoever. They actually worship petroleum.